Thank you very much for tuning in today. I said yesterday would be a two-parter, and then some stuff kind of got in the way. So today is going to be a two-part episode. This part one is going to be sportsy, and part two, we're going to look at updated pound-for-pound rankings in the UFC, as well as looking at a recap from Monday Night Raw from last night. So a lot to get to today. On this one, we're going to be looking at the Flames win over the Jets. How seriously can we take it? The Canucks lost to the Minnesota Wild. How seriously we can take it. And also looking at NBA All-Star Weekend with a little bit of CFL sprinkled in. So a lot to cover on the show today. Hopefully you like this video, literally and figuratively. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if there's something you agree with or disagree with. You can also subscribe in podcast form. Get this wherever you get your podcasts. That would help me out a lot. Leave a review there as well if you feel like it. You can also follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm at Primetime Klein, twitch.tv/primetimepk, and you can email this show, couchpotatodiary@yahoo.com. So, all of that is out of the way. Let's talk some Calgary Flames. So the Flames with a win over the Winnipeg Jets a night ago, I guess an afternoon ago, and a lot to cover from this one, and a lot that I'm going to be a little skeptical of, so I'll save that for a second, because the big story here is Oliver Kylington, as he gets his first goal since April of 2022. He has been dealing with mental health issues, basically between now and then, finally back on NHL ice, and finally back to the defenseman that we all know he could be. This is an amazing story, no matter how you look at it. For him to go from, like, we all kind of thought that, okay, he missed a season, but now he's going to come back here this year and everything's going to be fine. And then he didn't. And that kind of, like, not that missing a whole year doesn't mean it's serious, but, like, this was like, man, that this is really serious what he is going through. But credit the Flames for their patience, credit Oliver Kylington for working through these sorts of things. Taking the time to work through them. A lot of times you'll just like try to, this is what men do. They grind through the difficult parts of their lives, and they just kind of grin and bear it. And he was able to, or he recognized that that is not a healthy way to go about this, and apparently has addressed the situation that needed to be addressed, and is now coming back. And just to be able to work through those things alone is remarkable, right? But to now work through those things and to be able to get yourself back to playing professional hockey is another thing. And then to get yourself back into playing shape to play at the NHL level and to thrive, it is an amazing story. It is an inspirational story, what Oliver Kylington has been able to do. And you saw on that goal the incredible upside that Oliver Kylington has, where this is a player who has incredible skating ability. He made a good read there to get the steal, very good skating to go through the ice, and then some nice finish to put that one into the back of the net. Checked all the boxes that you would want to check from a Flame standpoint or from an Oliver Kylington standpoint. He is going to be such an interesting piece going forward, because there's going to be some changes on the blue line. We'll get to that in a second. This is a guy who is going to get, I think, some real minutes at the NHL level to really show what he can do, and I think it's so cool what he has done so far in Calgary. As far as this game goes, I'm not going to get too excited about it. I'm not going to forget a putrid loss against San Jose, followed by a really bad one against the Detroit Red Wings. I just, like, yes, the Jets are a very good team. Maybe the best team in the National Hockey League. But I'm just not going to get too fired up about this. So, I'm not going to take it seriously. I am officially off the wagon of taking this team seriously as even a playoff contender. It should be blown up and restarted. Regardless of how well they looked against the Jets, I'm not buying in anymore. Unless they basically win between now and the trade deadline, I'm not buying it. This was the game that shows you how they are going to win. And, like, they executed it very, very well, right? Like, I mean, don't give up a hat trick to Sean Monahan in the first period and maybe defend the front of your net a little bit better. But this was how they were going to win, by just simply, quite frankly, outworking your opposition. You get a couple of goals with a hard forecheck. You get a couple of you get a goal from Kadri off of a really strong play behind your net to get a steal from Perfetti, setting up a Mangiapane goal. Coleman's goal set up on a good forecheck. Kadri gets a chance that's set up on a good forecheck from Pospisil. This is how the Flames are going to win, by going out there and just working their asses off. And yes, you saw it for a night that they can do that. The problem is, it's really hard to do that night in, night out. This is a team, again, there are some pieces that you like, and some things are coming along really, really well. But they are going to be on the wrong side of the skill equation on a lot of nights in the NHL. So that work ethic is going to have to be there 100%. And if it's not going to show up against Detroit and San Jose, I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. So it's great that they can do this for a night, but they're going to have to put that effort up for the next, 30 games or whatever is left of this season, and that's just really hard to do. So the move for this Flames team to do is to try to get as much back for these players as you can and go from there. And that leads us to the Noah Hanifin discussion. It sounds like Hanifin is on the block. And that is absolutely the right move. Noah Hanifin is an incredibly skilled defender. This has been my favorite stretch of watching Noah Hanifin as a Calgary Flame. I think his sense in the offensive zone has really jumped up a notch. His skating is the best it has looked. He is just overall, I think his game has got to a point that it is about as good as you can expect from a Calgary Flames standpoint. And he's 26 years old, and if you sign him to an 8-year deal, there's a chance that whole 8 years is going to be really good. But the thing with this guy is, like, if you want to take advantage of players like that, you should be in a better spot by now. And this team just isn't, so it's time to move on. Like, how many of those years with Noah Hanifin are the Flames going to be really good and being able to really take a full advantage of his skills? And so now the way you take full advantage of his skills is by trading him for an absolute ransom. And there are going to be teams that are going to be looking for this guy. I think he moves to the top of every trade board. I think he is absolutely, from what is left, I think he is absolutely the best player available. And so Calgary now has this opportunity to make that move, make a big splash, and set yourself up well for the future. That is what the focus of this Flames team should be the next few months. Setting up for the future. Even if that future is next season, setting up for the future. A lot of talk around Rasmus Andersson as well. It would take a lot for me to want to trade Rasmus Andersson. And I have said before, no one's untouchable, right? Like, this is not a roster that has we couldn't possibly trade this guy. But there are some, it would take a lot to trade. That is absolutely for sure. I think that he is a culture setter. I think he's a future captain, whether it be with the Flames or with someone else. I think that much of this guy. But that being said, again, if you get an absolute haul, then who am I to say no to that? Again, this team is not in a spot to be saying no to these sorts of things. I do think that one would be a real blow, but at the same time, if you can get like a couple of picks, prospect, NHL, whatever, there are going to be teams that are going to miss out on Hanifin and Tanev, quite frankly, and are going to be looking at the exact type of player Rasmus Andersson is. I've said before, and I get the Flames haven't, but he's the type of guy you win with, right? He can play playoff style hockey. I think we have only scratched the surface of what this guy can do offensively. There's so much to his game that you really like, and I think the world of the kid. But at the same time, if someone blows my socks off, I'd have to consider it, at least. Just one more thing here. The Kuzmenko stuff is interesting because this is starting to follow kind of the same trajectory as Vancouver, right? Where, okay, couple great games, and now, he's kind of fallen down the lineup a little bit here. That's not ideal. That's not great. And it starts to build and it starts to build and it starts to build. So we'll see if he can kind of get it back on track. I thought he was good on the power play goal by Kadri. I think he provides a real weapon on the power play and just an element of activity that the power play didn't necessarily have before. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kuzmenko kind of goes about things going forward and how this Flames team goes about things with him going forward. What about his former team? Because that was insane yesterday afternoon. Let's talk about the Canucks. So, the wildest game, maybe of the season, takes place yesterday afternoon as the Minnesota Wild beat the Vancouver Canucks, or the Minnesota Vikings, in a strange cross-border battle, beat the BC Lions 10-7, the final. That was absolute insanity. Even like from the start, Vancouver, their first 2 shots of the game go in. They had 2 shots with a minute to go in the first period, and they were up 2-0. And then so you look at that, it's like, well, maybe Vancouver deserved to lose that game. And then they're up like a couple multi-goal leads that just evaporate because they keep taking penalties and Minnesota keeps taking advantage. Just an absolutely insane game. That being said, I don't know how much there is to actually read into that sort of thing. Like, it's a hilarious timing for me because I do a video last week. You know what? I think we should take the Canucks seriously. And then they go out and give up 10. But I don't think you sound the alarms. I don't think you, oh, well, now they have to trade Pettersson. I don't think it's anything like that. But I do think it is kind of a nice little highlight on the fact that this team does still need maybe some help on that blue line. And that's where the Calgary Flames come in, where we just had the discussion about Hanifin and Tanev. I think they need a Tanev more than a Hanifin, but I mean, fuck, they just gave up 10. Probably need both. And it's with Casey DeSmith in goal and blah, 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 blah. But this team is still probably a defenseman away from being that type of a juggernaut. But I think this is one of those that you kind of burn the game film from and you move on. Now, they have to move on quick because they're taking on Colorado tonight, and that's not an awesome bounce back opportunity for them. But like overall, I don't think you panic off of this from Vancouver. I think you absolutely try to stay out of the penalty box. You can't even, I guess you can kind of fault the penalty kill because they were taking penalties while on the penalty kill. But a couple 5-on-3 goals, it's tough to get that back. So overall, I think Vancouver's going to be fine from this. But Jesus, man, that was absolute insanity. And maybe does highlight that Vancouver needs maybe 1 or 2 more things. Out in Toronto, the Leafs get another win without Morgan Rielly. And just this morning, the suspension has been upheld. That makes sense to me. I did the video last week. I thought it was a wild overreaction from Morgan Rielly. I said, like, I have no problem with Greg hot dogging it. I have no problem with the Leafs wanting to respond. I have a problem with how they responded, but I have no problem with the desire to respond, and I have no problem with the league then suspending that response. And the Leafs then should try to appeal, and the league should be like, yeah, fuck off. No, he cross-checked the guy in the head. We're going to give that 5. Credit the Leafs for playing this well without Morgan Rielly, and maybe this ends up being the rallying cry that this Toronto Maple Leafs team has desperately needed all season long, and here they come now, en route to a championship, and great for them. But credit to them for stepping up in these types of ways, and it's some guys who you've absolutely heard of, and some guys who you have never heard of, stepping up in these big-time ways for the Leafs. I'm not going to say, well, trade Morgan Rielly now or anything like that. But I think that what this does kind of reiterate, not that the Leafs were going to be sellers or anything like that, but as much as we like to get on Toronto a lot, this is a good hockey team. This is a really good hockey team. And I think it kind of drives home like, oh yeah, there's a lot of talent on this group that we can lose Morgan Rielly for 5 games and go 4-0 to start that. So I would expect Toronto to be very aggressive at the deadline. We know the show's based in Calgary. We know Brad Treliving very well, and he is very aggressive around deadline time. So I'm sure Toronto will be making a real push for that. We'll see how it all goes, but I would expect Toronto to make another move. But this has been a really good run, and really does kind of drive home just how good this hockey team really is. Okay, that is it for the hockey discussion. The NBA All-Star Weekend went down this weekend. People had thoughts. I'll add to those thoughts now. So, lots of talk about the NBA All-Star Weekend this weekend, huh? It was not the most entertaining. And a lot of discussion now. How do you fix All-Star Weekend? What do we need to do about All-Star Weekend? The way that I have fixed my personal NBA All-Star Weekend, don't watch. Don't care. And it sucks, because like I did like All-Star Weekend at a time. I've never been a big All-Star Game fan just in general, so I'm not missing out on a whole lot. I would like it if the dunk contest was a little bit better, for sure. But it's just simple. Don't watch it. Like, if it's that bad, then how do we fix it? Just, this is the way, as sports fans, we get to vote, right? We're not in on collective bargaining, nor should we be. We're not in on rules meetings, nor should we be. But if there's something we don't like, don't watch it. Like, the people tweeting by the end of the game, oh, that was terrible. You could have told 3 minutes in that was going to be bad. It's not like it was wildly competitive and then just fell apart at the end. 200 points scored at halftime. You knew at that point, yeah, this is probably not going to be something I'm going to enjoy. Let's hate watch it for another hour and a half, shall we? That's ridiculous to me. Just don't watch it. Like, that is my simple solution to All-Star Weekend. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Yes, the product on the floor is really quite terrible. But it's an interesting balancing act, right? Because we want players to be more invested in the regular season games. We want them to be invested in this play-in tournament thing. At least the NBA does. And they were. To their credit, they were. And we don't want these players sitting for extended periods of time in the regular season, especially on nationally televised games. And teams, for the most part, have bought in on that sort of a thing, right? So then it's tough to say, but also work your bag off in this game that doesn't mean shit. Giver. Like, it's a weird balancing act. Like, it's supposed to be a marquee event for the league, and it's supposed to be all of these types of things. And yeah, it would be fun if a team with 12 Hall of Famers taking on a team with 10 Hall of Famers really went at it and really battled each other. That would be a blast. It would be super cool. Why though? You know, like, I feel like one of the things that we as sports fans have kind of picked up on that wasn't necessarily there, because before, when it was like back in the 80s and the 90s and even parts of the 2000s, one of the cool things about it is you didn't get to see these guys all the time. You know, like, as a Raptor fan, we, like, here in Canada, we're a little bit spoiled because we get we get a bunch of sports, right? Like, we get like all the games that people in the States get on national TV. Plus, our national networks will just throw on a fucking Bally Sports broadcast of the Clippers and Grizzlies on a Tuesday night for no good reason. Other than, you know, it's on and they need the content, so we get it. So it's a bit different here, but for a long time, the only time you got to watch these teams play were if they were playing your team. And by the way, your team's all 82 or whatever they played at the time, those weren't even on TV all the time. The only time you got to see them was when they played your team and only on select occasions. So then you get all these players in one spot. This was your chance to really see them. Now you can watch any player you want on any night at any time, really. And so that, like, the desire for that, I do think has gone away a little bit. And so, like, at this point, as a sports fan, it's like, why do I care? I get to see these guys all the time. Like, it's neat that Giannis and whoever and Tatum are on the same team at the same time, and it's Curry and LeBron and Jokic. Like, oh, could you imagine if they actually tried, how cool that would look? And yeah, it would. But we get to see, like, LeBron versus Giannis all the time now. And we get to see all these types of matchups, so that there's a part of the spectacle that has just kind of gone away. But also, like, I would be a little disappointed if Steph Curry was gaming it all he got in the All-Star game and then rolls an ankle and now he can't play for 2 weeks, and this role that Golden State was on is kind of gone. So there is a weird balance with all of this. But if you want to actually fix it, instead of my suggestion of just don't watch it, if you actually do want to, like, get into this and see how to fix it, I have a solution. And it's not a solution, it starts with a sentence I don't say a whole lot. But the NBA should follow the NHL. The NHL has turned their All-Star game into a series of 3-on-3 tournaments. So do that. NBA Street is one of the most romanticized games in the history of video games. Do that. 3-on-3. My official solution, I think, like, just put hour on the clock, halftime, hour on the clock. You have a series of three-person teams. And maybe even 4, so we can get a sub in there, right? But you have a series of 4-person teams. And you just play, you know what? King's Court. Winner stays. First team to 11. 3-pointers are worth 2. We can play full court if you want. We can play half court. It's All-Star Weekend. We just put lights in the floor. We can make it an abbreviated court. And let's do, like, just street ball style. Let's go out there, have your fun. First team to 11 wins. It gets it moving. You can have there's a natural spot for commercial breaks after each game, or if you want to call a timeout or whatever, like that there's spots for commercials. And then it's just whichever team has the most wins at the end of 2 hours is the winner. And how you decide those teams, it could be a draft. It could be each player throws their shoe in the middle and they just toss shoes out and those are the teams. You could do any, mini, miny, mo. Fans vote on what teams they want. There's a number of different ways you could do it. But just have like 2 1-hour halves, teams of 4, 3 on the court, and then you have a sub. And you do it like rec ball where the sub has to run in and out. And you just go. And whichever team ends up with the most wins at the end wins the All-Star game. And they get $500,000 and a new Kia Sportage or something like that. That is how I personally would fix All-Star weekend. Also, the slam dunk contest. There is a lot of crying about the slam dunk contest. And yeah, like the dunks, we are kind of running out of innovations that the human body can do while flying 10 feet in the air and dunking a basketball. Unless we implement trampolines, there is but so much the human body can do with some of these dunks. And so I think one of the issues is if like Jaylen Brown was out there and all of a sudden it became a little bit more like, oh, let's see what he can do. If John Morant was doing the dunks that Mac McClung was doing, we'd be losing our minds because it's star power along with it. We want to see stars, right? That's why the whole weekend exists, is we want to see stars. And I love that the NBA does just like whoever is the best gets to go out there. And so instead of just who is the fastest skater among the All-Stars, bad example because Connor McDavid's obviously the fastest skater in the NHL and he's always going to be an All-Star. But instead of whoever's the fastest skater, it's just the best dunker overall. But at the same time, we want to see stars in this, right? That's why, like, the Jordan dunks at the time were very innovative, and we look back on them fondly, but it was Jordan doing them, right? If it was whoever, if Horace Grant was going out there and doing some of those dunks and rocking the cradle and stuff, it would be neat, but it wouldn't have been as big because it's not the superstar. We want to see the stars. We want to see LeBron in there, right? It was great when Dwight Howard was doing the dunks. We want to see that. And so I think if you had those same dunks, but with the superstars of today's league instead of guys, I think it would add a little bit more to it. So I think all it's missing is star power right now, which is a funny thing to say about NBA All-Star weekend. The highlight of the weekend was obviously Sabrina versus Steph in that 3-point shootout. That was so cool to see and so awesome that Sabrina held her own in that and probably would have won the men's championship. So that was really, really cool to see. But overall, like, it was a bit of a dud weekend that I found out about on social media. That's how I consume All-Star Weekend. I would highly recommend it. Let's wind things down here with a little bit of football talk. So CFL free agency rolls on, and a big name is off of the board as Tim White is staying with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This is probably the biggest move the Ticats have made so far this offseason, and it kind of feels like it doesn't matter. I really, like, if the Riders folded tomorrow, I would probably start pulling for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They've always been kind of the Riders of the East, right? Always feeling like the plucky underdogs, have had some great teams, ran into some heartbreak, extremely passionate fan base, yada, 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 yada. So I do not come from this from a place of hatred towards Hamilton, but you can bring in all the weapons you want. If I don't trust your quarterback, I'm not going to buy into it. And right now with Hamilton, I don't trust the quarterback. I didn't see anything from Bo Levi Mitchell 2 years ago that made me to believe that last year was going to be any different. And I certainly didn't see anything from last year that makes me think this upcoming season is going to be any different. Hamilton, I think, has, pardon the pun because of his Calgary roots, I think they've kind of attached the wagon to the wrong horse. And they are kind of just trying to ride that one into the ground. And I just don't see a world where it works. And when you look at the moves, like Montreal won the damn thing last year. Toronto, they've lost quite a few pieces, but are probably going to be awesome because they have the best player in the league at quarterback. So there's 2 already ahead of you. And then you look at Ottawa. I love the moves that they make with Brown and Rhymes. They haven't done a whole lot since then, but do I like that combo better than Bo Levi Mitchell and Tim White? I think I kind of do. So Hamilton is in a really difficult spot, and they've tried to shuffle things around there. I just don't think it's going to matter. They need to get that quarterback spot figured out. And unfortunately for them, they are financially tied to that quarterback. And it's going to be really, really difficult, I think, for them to be able to bounce back out of that one and make their way up the ladder in the East. Would love to be wrong because I love Bo, but I simply don't see it happening. All right, let's close the show today here with today's ticket. It's an all NHL card because it's an all NHL night. 4 games on today's ticket. We will start with the Florida Panthers taking on the Ottawa Senators. The Panthers have started to find their stride, and Ottawa never really has. So we will go Panthers minus a goal and a half. It has been a very rocky time for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that continues tonight against the New York Islanders. We will go Islanders just to win at plus 114. Vegas taking on the Nashville Predators. The Preds have been absolutely shit pumped in a couple of games. They're coming off of a win, but they've had a really, really rough stretch. Well, Vegas is Vegas, so I like the Golden Knights to win this one by a couple. I'm going Vegas minus 1.5. And we talked about the Canucks at the start of the show, so we'll end the show with them as well. Going up against Colorado. That was a wild one last night, and I think a little bit dispiriting. So coming off of a back-to-back where you just gave up 10, I think Colorado comes in and picks up a big win over the Canucks. So I'm going Colorado minus 140 on the money line. So Panthers by a couple over Ottawa, Islanders and Avalanche to win over the Penguins and Canucks, and the Golden Knights by a couple over Nashville. That is today's ticket. And that is part 1, I promise, of today's show. Part 2, we'll be focusing on the Ultimate Fighting Championship in the WWE as there's a new champion in the featherweight division. One of the top pound-for-pound fighters just lost. So our pound-for-pound rankings shaken up a little bit. We will look at that, and we'll recap Monday Night Raw. So a lot to get to on the show coming up. Make sure one more time you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are listening in podcast form. By the way, if you have only been a YouTube watcher, you can get these in your ears in podcast form. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Couch Potato Diary. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review. If you want just more of me, I'm on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm at Primetime Klein, twitch.tv/PrimetimePK. You can email the show, couchpotatodiary at yahoo.com, or you can find us online at facebook.com/couchpotatodiary. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and I'll talk to y'all in just a little bit. I'm out.